Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the book of Joshua with chapter 7. We just completed chapter 6, the account of the conquering and destruction of the city of Jericho. And at the end, we read about Joshua's decree that the entire city should be burned, and the wealth of the city, the gold, silver, other precious metals, etc., should be put in storage for the treasure house of the tabernacle of the Mishkan, and that no one is allowed to benefit from the booty. Now, we pointed out the importance of this in the scheme of the battles to conquer the land of Israel, and that the first town that they conquered was done in such a way as to remind the people that the purpose of this conquering is not just any conquering of land, not the same as every other invasion that would have taken place in this time period in history of one group of people against another, but rather this was something much greater than that. This was something that was the people of God who are here to bring this message of God to the world, are conquering this land, which is populated by people who are the opposite of everything God stands for, people that lived immoral lives of pagan worship, lives of child sacrifice, lives of all types of awful immoralities and unethical behavior. And that monotheism represents a step forward of mankind into the worship of the one God who demands that we live a moral and just life. Now, therefore, the putting away of I'm emphasizing this now because it's important to understand the incident we're going to read about in this chapter. What was the importance of dedicating the spoils of the first town conquered to God? Vayimalu v'nei Yisrael, the people of Israel, to be mo'el means to benefit from something you're not supposed to benefit from. Those that are familiar with Jewish law know the concept of me'ilah. Me'ilah is when someone benefits from consecrated property. So someone benefits from property that was meant to be used for a holy purpose. The people of Israel did not listen to Joshua, and they succumbed to the temptation of taking of the wealth. Now, interestingly, it is introduced in such a way the people of Israel were Moel, and then it continues and says, Vayikach Achan ben Carmi ben Zavdi ben Zerach, that one man named Achan, who's the son of Carmi, son of Zavdi, son of Zerach, who was one of the descendants of Lemate Yehuda, of the tribe of Judah, min hacherem, he took from the prescribed, the prohibited items, and God was angry at the people of Israel. Now, this is fascinating because the prophet here, Joshua, specifies one person who took. As far as we know at this point, and we'll see later, no one even knew who this person took anything. He took it privately on his own, but the verse introduces this as Vayimalu b'nei Yisrael, the children of Israel, the people of Israel. The entire people sinned because one person sinned, which introduces the concept of known in Hebrew as Kol Yisrael Arevim Zel Hazeh. All people of Israel are responsible for one another. If one person sins, if one person does something wrong, we're all responsible for each other. We can't just say, "Oh, that he's the bad guy, not me." If evil exists, it's at least in part because we were not there for each other when we needed to be. We didn't teach each other proper behavior. We didn't show concern for each other. We didn't treat each other properly. We didn't give each other the things that we needed. And had we fostered a better environment in our community, then our community would not have had that one person sin, that one person do the bad thing. This is a concept which is a very important concept of Judaism in general, and we see it laid out here very clearly in this verse. Vayishlach Yoshua Anashim Yericho. Yeshua, at this point, did not know yet of this transgression, and he's moving on from Jericho to continue the conquest of the land. So he sent messengers out, to a town called Ai, Asher im Beit Oven Mikedem Beit El, which is close to another place called Beit Oven, which is east of the town of Beit El of Jacob's fame. Vayomer Alehem Lamor, and he said to the men, Aluv Raglu Asaretz, I want you to go and spy out the land. Vayalu Anashim Vayaglu Etai, and they went and they searched out the next town, Ai. So basically, again, the same pattern as before, to send a few people to check for recon, to check out the area, find its weaknesses, its strengths, so that they can prepare for battle. Vayashuva Yeshua, they came back to Joshua, Vayomrei Lov, and they told him, Al Ya'al Kol Ha'am Ke'alpayim Ish, O Kishloshes Alafim Ish Ya'alu V'yaku Etai. The entire nation doesn't need to go to Ai. We can get this easy. Two or 3,000 people can go, and we can take down the city of Ai. Alti Yagasham at Kalam. Don't bother sending the whole nation Kim'atema, because they're small. They're a small town. Now, this could smack a little bit of hubris, or it could be just a good advice. In other words, they're just saying, it's not necessary to mobilize all of the entire army to conquer this one small town. Or it could have been that this hubris displayed by these miraglim, by these spies, is indicative of the sin that led to Achan, which is the sin that led to someone thinking that he can get away with taking from the prohibited materials. In other words, the people are starting already to get high on themselves. After they win in Jericho and Jericho, they think, oh, we can do this, we're strong, we're great. But so there are two ways to look at this. Vayalu mina'am, so we're starting to feel gavo, we're starting to feel hubris leak into the people, which unfortunately became the bane of the people of Israel for the next several hundred years. So about 3,000 people from the nation went, and when they attacked Ai with the small force, they ended up having to retreat and getting chased away by the people of Ai. So the people of Ai mounted a defense, and they were successful. And approximately 36 soldiers were killed by the people of Ai during this rout. And they chased them back outside the gate of the city of Ai, all the way until a place called Shivarim Vayakum Bamorad, and they killed them as they fled. And the heart of the nation, the heart of the people, melted. The morale had gone down and it became like water. Their solid heart became like water. So now the people of Israel, what happened to the big miracles that God performed in Jericho and these big massive victories, we planned our first assault on our own, and God wasn't there for miracles, and we ended up losing a significant number of soldiers. Vayikra Yoshua Simlotav, and Joshua tore his clothing, Vayipol al Panav Arza, and he fell on his face, prostrated himself on the ground, Lefnei Aron Adonai Ad Erev, before the ark of God, all the way to evening. Presumably, it seems like he would have fasted all day and prayed. Hu v'ziknei Yisrael, he and all of the elders of Israel, Vayalu afar al rosham, and they put dirt upon their heads. These are practices that are common in those that are fasting and praying over a calamity. Vayomer Yoshua, and Joshua said, Aha, which is an exclamation, or like an Oi, Adonai Elohim, the Lord our God. Lama ha'avarta ha'avir et amazet hayarden. Why did you bring us past over this Jordan River, Laseitzo Sano, just in order to put us in the hands Biadu Amori Lavidenu and of the Amorites? Presumably, Ai was populated by a group of people that were part of the tribe of the Amorites. Just in order to destroy us. It would, if had we known this was going to be our fate, we could have just stayed on the other side of the Jordan in the lands that we already conquered and settled down and be done. Why have you brought us here? So Joshua feels like God has forsaken him. Joshua, of course, at this point hadn't yet sensed that there was a problem in the midst, hadn't yet sensed that the people are no longer have their hearts with God. Otherwise, presumably Joshua would have prayed to God and asked the people to repent, but he didn't know they had anything to repent for. At this point, Joshua thinks everyone is moving in the right direction, so it must be because God left them. Bi Adonai, please God, Ma'omar, what can I say? Acharei asher hafach Yisrael oraf ne'avav. Now that the people of Israel have turned their necks in front of their enemies. In other words, they've turned their backs and ran. Vayishmu haKenani. And then what's going to happen? The Canaanites are going to hear, all the people in Lebanon, Sabo Aleinu, they're going to all congregate against us. Yoshua knew it, we'll find out later, but he already presumably knew that the people of the land were going to unite against the people of Israel to try to drive them out. They're going to cut off our name, our reputation, our existence, minarets from the land. And what's going to be with your great name? In other words, your entire mission here, which is to bring this idea of monotheism to the world through our conquering and settling and building a nation in this land, this entire enterprise is going to be gone. What's going to be with the mission? Vayomer Adonai el Yoshua. God said to Joshua, Kumlach, get up. Why are you falling in your face? In other words, don't you understand what's going on here? When you fall on your face and you cry and you pray, when that's the last, when that's all that's left, first what you need to do is fix your problem. To come to God and pray when you have sin in your hand without repentance first is not just a waste, but it's corrupt. You have to fix your ways first. You have to be a better person. You need to look into your problems, see what you've done wrong, fix it, and then come and pray to me. Chata Yisrael, the people of Israel have sinned. V'gam Hubris berisi, they have broken my covenant, asher tzivisi osam, that I have commanded them. V'gam, and also lakhu min hacherem, they took from the prohibited items. V'gam ganvu, and they even stole. V'gam kichashu, and they lied. V'gam somu b'chleim, and they placed it in their own. They snuck these items and goods into their bags. This is it's interesting here how God says Avru es berisi, they broke my covenant, asher tzivisi osam, that I have commanded them, and also they took from the cherem. It almost sounds like there was a sin that preceded that. Exactly what that sin is not being laid out by the pasuk. I would personally venture to state that that sin that's referred to here, Hubris berisi, is the sin of arrogance. Once they committed the sin of arrogance, then lakhu min hacherem, they took from the prohibited items. And what does that lead to? That leads to them lying. As we know, all you need to do is do one sin, which leads up, Avera goreret Avera, the Mishnah says, the rabbis teach us, one sin leads to another. Once you steal, you have to hide it. Once you hide, the rabbis of Chazal mention here that since this took place on Shabbat, the stealing entailed violating the Sabbath. So what he coveted these items that he was prohibited to take, and then which led to him to have to lie, sin right there, to break Shabbat, sin right there, and of course the covenant itself, and walk around with stolen things and benefit from items of Hagdash, items that are meant to be holy and consecrated, sin right there. So one after another, one little thing, all he thought when he saw this gold, silver, whatever it was that he coveted, all he thought was, yeah, I'll take this little thing, who's going to harm it? It's going to harm no one, and I'll benefit from it. But it ends up leading to a long list of other problems. And that's what God is saying here. V'gam lakhu min hacherem, v'gam ganvu. And then they also this, and then they also stole, and they also swore, and I mentioned, of course, the sin of stealing from Hagdash, the sin of stealing from consecrated property. So stealing, lying, breaking the Sabbath, all because of one thing. This is why the people of Israel could not stand in front of their enemies. This is why they had to turn their necks and run from their enemies. Because they, the people of Israel, have now become the cherem. They are the ones that are forbidden. I'm no longer going to be with you if you don't destroy these prohibited items from within you. Something needs to be done. I am with you when you're with me, God says. You need to fix the problem. Then you can come pray. And that's why God started off this thing saying, why are you praying? Praying isn't going to do squat until you fix the problem. Kum, get up. Kadesh etam, make the nation holy. V'yamartu hitkadshu l'machar, and tell the people, tomorrow you are going to make yourselves holy. We are going to fix this. We are going to purify the camp. Because so says God, there is something, there is items, there are people that within you that are prescribed, that are evil, that are bad, that are wrong. You will not be able to stand in front of your enemies until you remove this forbidden stuff from within your midst. God is making it very clear that the people's morality, it is in the people's hands. This is the message of the book. Each and every chapter almost brings us a step closer to seeing God saying, it is in your hands, it's not in my hands. I'm not here to make big miracles just to make you win battles and win all kinds of things just because you're great and I decided to support you. But I'm doing this because you are supposed to be bearing the message of morality. And the message that Yericho was meant to send to the world was that these people are different. They're not destroying and conquering this land. They're not conquering this city because they want to get rich and wealthy for their own benefit. They're doing this because they have a project. They have to bring God's name into this world. And you're going in the morning. You're going to go to all the tribes. And then when apparently there was going to be a process where there will be an indicator. By God will indicate which tribe it is that has the problem. Exactly how is not being made clear in this verse, but the people will come before the ark, and it will be obvious the ark will make it obvious which tribe is the source of the problem. And then once we choose the tribe, Yikrav LaMishpachos, then the tribe is broken up into its families. It will pick one of those families. And then when it picks one of those families, then each home, a family means a large extended family, but then each extended families are broken down into smaller family units. And then that home will pick one of the men, person by person. And Gvarim literally means men. It seems obvious that it would have been a man, one of the soldiers attacking the city, that would have grabbed the booty and not a woman. So the breakdown of this, singling out the tribe is again going back to the principle of what we said at the beginning of this chapter, and that principle and idea is that the collective community is responsible, and the closer one is to the source of evil, to the problem, the more responsible one is to fix it. First one looks at, it doesn't mean necessarily that when someone does something wrong, their family and their community is responsible for it, but on a certain level there is communal responsibility. When a community is corrupt, when a community loses its moral values, then they're responsible for the wrongs that are done by the individuals. And this is still God talking to Joshua. He who is caught with the cherem, with the prohibited items, shall be executed by burning. Osovias kol ashalo, everything, all of his property. Ki hover et brit Adonai, because he has he has broken the covenant of God, and he did something terrible in Israel. And Joshua got up in the morning, and as the tribes passed before the ark, it was indicated that it was Judah, the tribe of Judah, that was responsible. Then he took the heads of the families, of the extended families of Judah, and the family of Zerach was indicated. And then they broke it down, and then Zavdi was was the subfamily. They broke down his home by Yilached Achan ben Karmi ben Zavdi ben Zerach Lamati Yehuda, and it pointed out that Achan was the guilty party. One wonders what would have happened had Achan presented himself and admitted his problem beforehand, whether or not. But it's clear from the fact that Achan had to be found out by the ark that he was intending on keeping up his ruse and his lie to the last minute. Which once Achan knew that there was a problem and that he was the cause of the problem, should he not have stepped forward on his own to admit it? This is a serious flaw on Achan's part, and clearly Achan did not understand the gravity of what he had done. Vayan Achan et Yoshua. Vayomer Yoshua Achan. This is verse 19. So Joshua said to Achan, Beni, Simna kavod l'Adonai Eloi Yisrael v'ten lo toda. Do honor to the God, the Lord of Israel, and give him thanks. Don't be afraid of me, and tell me, please, what it is that you have done. So Yoshua is now finally asking Achan to come forward with an admission. Achan knew now at this point, now that the ark itself had pointed him out as the guilty party, that he's no longer going to get away with it. Finally, he comes forward. Vayamar, and he said as follows: Amna, it is true. Anochi chatasi l'Adonai Eloi Yisrael. I have sinned to God, the Lord of Israel, v'chazos asisi, and such is what I did. Va'ereb b'sholol, and I saw among the booty aderes shinar, a nice cloak, achas tova, which was a very beautiful cloak, umasayim shkolim kesef, and I saw 200 silver shekels, ulashon zahav echad, and a strap of gold, chamishim shkolim mishkolo, which weighed 50 shekels. Va'echmedim, and I desired them, va'ekachem, and I took them. V'hinam tmunim ba'aretz v'sochali, and I buried them under the ground in my tent. V'akesef tachteha, and the silver is underneath those items. V'yishlach Yoshua malachim, and Joshua sent messengers v'yarutzu ha'olah, and they ran to his tent. V'hinei, presumably they ran before someone could get in there and grab them, or maybe his family would try to hide them in another place. And sure enough, it was all hidden there, including the silver. And they took them out of the tent, and they brought them to Joshua, and they placed them out in front of the ark. And Joshua then took Achan, the son of Zerach. Here just naming his great-great-grandfather as Ben, as son, because often the descendant is called Ben, son, even if it's not a direct son. V'yas ha'kesef, v'yas ha'aderes, and the silver, and the cloak, v'yas l'shon hazav, and the gold, v'yas banav, v'yas benosav, and his children, v'yas shor, v'yas chamoro, v'yas tzono, and his animals, v'yas ahalo, and his tent, v'yas kolashalo, and all of his properties, v'chol Yisrael imo, and all the people of Israel with them, v'yaluo samei mekachar, and they brought them to the valley of Achor. Achor is a place name, but it's also whether or not it may have had the name beforehand, and then Yeshua chose it because it had this name. But Achor also means to dirty or to sully something. It could also mean to cause trouble or problems. And Achan here is the source of trouble and problems, as we'll see in the next verse 25. Yomer Yoshua, and Joshua said, Me'achar tano, how much have you troubled us? How much have you caused us problems? Here's the word Achor. Ya'akorcha, just like you have caused us problems. Ya'akorcha, God will cause you problems. Vayirgemu oso, and they stoned him. Kol Yisrael Evan, the people of Israel threw stones at him. Even though the death sentence was for burning, it seems that the people were just so upset with Achan that they were throwing things at him. In the end, he was executed by fire. And then they stoned them. Now, the rabbis point out that over here it says Vayirgemu Oso, they stoned him in a single language. And so in other words, that it was only him that was put to death, not his family members, although his family members were up there embarrassed and pointed out and ashamed in front of everyone. That's how pretty much all the commentaries understand this. One could read this verse to understand that it was his entire family that was executed, but that's not how most, pretty much all of the commentaries understand it, and they point out the choice of the term oso, him, in singular. By Yakimu Allah, again here it's singular again, which again the commentaries point out that it was only on him that they placed a heap of stones as a commemorative memorial ad gadol ad hazeh, which is there until this day. By Yashov Adonai Mecharon Apo, and God, his anger calmed. Al Ken Karashim Makomahu. This is why he called the place name of this place Emek Achar, the valley of Achar. Here it seems to indicate that he just named it the valley of troubles, ad hayom hazeh, until this day, as opposed to before where it seemed like he chose the place that was already named Emek Achar, but probably it was used. It's probably he named it now, but since people at the time of the writing of the book, people already knew it as Emek Achar, that's what he called the place name. I know it's a little long, but it was one solid episode, so I couldn't really divide it. Thank you so much for studying chapter 7. Looking forward to studying chapter 8, and of course, the entire wonderful book of Joshua together.